This man in the top right corner is up for parole after serving 40 years of a life sentence. He's a Vietnam War veteran with 2 Bronze Stars. He saw a lot of combat. He really had no chance at getting parole, but because of the recent act passed, he's given the opportunity for the first time. The end, something interesting happens between the board member, Miss Jackson, and the prosecutor on the bottom right. They really bang heads and get into it, something I've never seen before. This is a re-upload, so some of you may have seen it already. But with that, let's jump in. And please do like and subscribe. It helps with the algorithm.
Good afternoon.
Good morning.
Good
Good evening.
afternoon.
Good evening.
Sir, would you introduce yourself? Tell us your name and DOC.
My name is Danny Miles, 1023.
2023. Yes, sir, Mr. Miles, you're here before the pardon board this afternoon seeking the commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced December 1982 in St. Tammany Parish for a second-degree murder conviction. You received a life sentence. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and you are represented by counsel. Counsel, would you enter your name?
Good afternoon, Jasmine Cole with the Parole Project, and I'm representing Mr. Danny Miles. With the board's permission, I'd like to make a brief statement at the end, please.
All right, thank you. We have Mr. Miles for your information here and support. We have Mr. Kerry Myers with the Parole Project. He'll be speaking on your behalf. Here in opposition, we have Rebecca Pincurd from the DA's office, Mr. Brian Clark, and the Victims Assistance Coordinator, Mr. Romero, who will be speaking. And we'll do that at the appropriate time. Your case today has been assigned to Mrs. Jackson. Would you answer her questions?
Good afternoon, Mr. Miles. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, how are you today?
I'm well.
Well, your case has been assigned to me, so I'll start the questioning for the board. How old are you?
72.
And how long have you been incarcerated on this crime?
December the 13th will be 40 years.
40 years? Okay. This involved your killing a supervisor at your job site, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
There had been some sort of disagreement between you and him. You left, you came back and you were armed with a gun and you shot and killed your boss. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
We're going to talk a little bit about that, but how long had you worked at that particular place?
Probably about 6-7 months.
7 months. Now, you served in Vietnam, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
What branch of the military?
I was in the Army.
How old were you when you went to Vietnam?
I was 18 going on 19.
When you got to Vietnam?
I made 19 in Vietnam.
And how long did you how long did you serve in the military?
3 years.
And you were honorably discharged, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
When you got out of the military, what did you do? What was your first stop? What was your first job? Tell me what you were doing after you got released from the military and returned home.
My first job was at the janitor at high school. That was my first job.
How long did you work that job?
I'm gonna say about 5 months, probably.
And what was the longest job you had after you returned home?
Maybe 7 months. I've had a number of jobs, construction jobs.
When did things start going bad for you after you got home?
I would probably say immediately after I got home.
Why would you say that? Tell us what was going on.
Well, the drinking, I got out the military, my drinking problems got a little bit worse. I kind of stayed isolated a lot at first when I first came home.
Had you started drinking while you were in Vietnam before you came home?
Well, of course, adolescence as a kid in 8th grade, 9th grade, we drunk wine and beer. So, but after I went to the military and came home to Vietnam, my drinking escalated. I drank pretty regular.
How much were you drinking when you got back home?
Well, really, I was basically wine and beer. I came in contact with other people, then I would drink whatever they had.
No, but how often did you drink? Was you drinking out of control? Did you have a drinking problem, do you think?
I didn't think it was a problem, but apparently it was.
Okay. Again, how often would you, on average, how, every day?
Yes, ma'am.
Drank that? Okay. Would you drink till you got drunk or tipsy every time you drank?
Well, it would probably be tipsy. As I said, the only time I probably would drink more than I normally would if I come in contact with certain people. And whatever they were drinking, I would drink. But my main, by myself, I would just get tipsy. I wouldn't get drunk.
What about drug use? Did you use any kind of drugs either in Vietnam or when you got back stateside?
My drug habit, well, I didn't habit, but I started using drugs in Vietnam.
And what kind of drugs did you start using in Vietnam?
Well, actually, I started off with marijuana in Vietnam and then experimented with opium.
Okay, and experimented with opium?
Yes, ma'am.
That was while you were in Vietnam?
Yes, ma'am.
And what about when you got home? What was your drug use like when you got home?
Well, alcohol and marijuana.
Did you use any drugs besides marijuana?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
What kind of drugs did you use besides marijuana?
Heroin, cocaine.
Did you start using heroin and cocaine?
Yes, ma'am.
When?
After I come back from Vietnam, I guess, I was in Germany. So I guess the habit I developed overseas, I guess that habit just, I brought it home with me, so to speak, I guess.
Over the last 40 years, have you given any thought to your drinking and why you were drinking and using drugs when you came home?
Yes, I examined myself and tried to understand why I was doing those drugs and alcohol. And I guess I was escaping from responsibility and I guess being insecure about a lot of things too. I didn't think I was alcoholic. I really felt that was kind of a way of coping with my everyday existence, so to speak, a dealing with reality.
Let me ask you this. Have you ever been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD?
No, no, ma'am.
Do you think you had PTSD?
Most likely.
And why do you think that?
Well, being in Vietnam and friends and guys that I knew that were killed, and I just couldn't understand why it was not me. I felt these guys were much better people than I was. And the fear, constant fear, and living from day to day, not knowing if you're going to make it back or not. And I guess that's really, I'm a veteran, and we wanted to go to the wall, and I really didn't really want to go because it just, seeing those names just brought back memories of just hard to deal with sometimes.
I was looking at your military record. You were highly decorated in the military. You had an exemplary military record. You got an infantry combat badge. You had 2 Bronze Stars. What do you get a Bronze Star for?
Well, to be honest with you, I was just doing what I was supposed to do. I didn't ever give it any thought about why or what. My job was to protect my fellow men and to respond to whatever action that was upon us. I never thought about it with anything special, to be honest with you. I was just a soldier doing what I was supposed to do.
But the military recognized you with 2 Bronze Stars, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the National Defense Service Medal? That was just for serving in Vietnam, or what was that?
That's a medal that you get when you first come into the military. You get with your basic training, AIT. Once you complete that, they give you a National Defense Medal.
What about the Air Medal? What was that for?
Those were for combat missions where you had to airlift into hot LZ or hot cold LZ. Well, that means you landed and getting fired upon you. We had 2 missions, ORAN 1 and Gale 2.
Then you got 2 medals, one a Vietnam Campaign Medal and a Vietnam Service Medal. What's the difference between a campaign medal and a service medal?
I think one of those medals is the Vietnamese give to you, and the other one that the military gives to you. There's two different medals that you get. One is from the military itself. I think the Vietnamese military gives you that medal.
How old were you when you returned back to the United States?
21. After I got the military, I was 21.
Let's talk about what happened the day that Mr. Stiles was killed. We have the record. We know what the police reports say. But just from your perspective, what was going on in your mind? Why were you so angry that led to your shooting, Mr. Stiles? Can you explain to us what happened that day and why you responded the way that you did?
It was a holiday week of New Year's, and my wife brought me to work. And I wasn't drunk when I got to work, but I had been drinking. So when I got to the job site, my supervisor came and told me that we had the day off to tell the guy that I work with that we were going to keep a skeleton crew. So I got the van with the bottle of Yago Sangria, and it wasn't half empty. I would have got the van with the bottle, but we had to go to work. But after we said we had the day off, I finished the bottle of wine through the trash can, and all of a sudden, Mr. Stiles, who was the carpenter's foreman, just out of clear blue came over there and used obscenities and was cursing me in front of everybody. And we kind of startled everybody. We didn't know who he was talking to. And he said, "I'm talking to you." I said, "Mr. Stiles, you can talk to me better than that. I'm a man just like you are. I don't understand why you got to be cursing me or anything." So we changed a few more words. He left and got the assistant supervisor. He came outside. He said, "Miles, you been drinking on the job?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Don't be drinking on the job." I said, "That's all Mr. Stiles had to say." He had to come out there cursing me, disrespecting in front of these men. Really, I don't understand why. Other than he could tell me better than that. And that's really what happened. I left the job to get drunk to forget about it, and ended up getting drunk. And came back to the job thinking it was payday. I saw him again. We changed some words. He read back at me, and I thought he had a hammer. I really just responded to him by shooting.
All right, well, let's talk about what you've done since you've been incarcerated. I show that you have a low risk score. You've only had 3 write-ups in 40 years. Your last write-up was in 1992. Does that sound about right?
Yes, ma'am.
And that was for a Rule 28. Do you remember what that write-up was about?
I think it was aggravated disobedience. I was getting off from work, and the sergeant wanted me to serve on the line, 3 o'clock. I said, Sarge, I'm getting off from work. It's Bill Clay said, I want you to serve on the line. And I kind of changed the word with him. I stepped outside the gate. He shut the gate. I said, I'll go, sir. He told me I'm gonna write you up. That's what it happened.
Your institutional record is good. You've taken some vocation, you got your GED in 1992, is that correct?
Excuse me, ma'am?
Got your GED in
Oh, yes, ma'am.
GED
Yes, ma'am. I got-
92,
Yes, ma'am.
all right. And you got training as a welder and a plumber?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you a Class A trustee?
Yes, ma'am.
How long have you had that status?
I think since 92.
So 30 years you've been a Class A trustee?
I think so.
What's your job at the prison?
My job, I work at the water treatment plant
Water treatment plant? How long have you worked at the water treatment plant?
since 2000.
And what other jobs have you had?
Of course, I worked in the kitchen, maintenance in main prison. That's basically it, I think.
I see that you've taken 100 hours of pre-release,
Yes, ma'am.
living in balance 1 and 2,
Yes, ma'am.
Page Your Age,
Yes, ma'am.
and you've done numerous faith-based programs. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. I can quite hear you, but yes, ma'am.
Numerous
All right.
faith programs.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Also, are you the chaplain for the Camp F Veterans Club?
Yes, ma'am. Chapter 6.
How long have you been the chaplain?
Since 2006.
Okay. So are there any programs that you've been involved in that I have not mentioned?
My community service, the hospice program for the Campbell vets. That's a program that I actually we're proud of. But it gives me pleasure to be a part of that.
Tell me what your job is. What do you do with them?
Well, we had a committee, and the chaplain committee was part of the Campbell vets. And another guy and myself, we volunteered to be in that committee, and we go to the hospital on Saturdays. We bring cosmetics and fruits and magazines and books, clothing. And of course, we offer our friendship. We share our faith with them. We pray with them. We just try to encourage them the best we can. Due to the fact that I've been on the ward myself, I know how it feels to be over there. And most convicts are kind of introspective. We don't really like talking to people too much. But nevertheless, we would like somebody to come and share their faith with us or share some compassion with us. And I've been doing that since 2006.
Warren, what can you tell us about Mr. Miles?
Danny has been a Class A trustee since '96. He's been in one crew with the water treatment plant, which is something for us here on the grounds because we supply our own water, about 3 million gallons a day. So the treatment system is imperative that it maintains the ability to function properly, and that is a vital part of us. He does do the community service. He has been an asset to us since his incarceration. I'll go back and kind of just say that his last DB report was a work offense back in 1992. And I know in the past we've kind of talked about turning corners, and it seems that somewhere around that time is when Danny turned the corner for us.
Okay, well, thank
Sure.
you, Warren. Mr. Miles,
Yes, ma'am.
how do you feel about the crime that you committed? You've had 40 years to think about it. How do you think it impacted Mr. Stiles' family?
I think that it would impact his family greatly. I really don't believe any family should go through what I put Mr. Stiles' family through. The shock, the sadness, and probably anger they felt, probably can't even be described in any words I can even think of. I regret my actions completely. My remorse can't be put into words. And it's something that I can never forget. I know they can't, I know I would not. And they've been in my prayers since 81, since 82. That God will give me his peace and help them to cope and live with reality they have lost their loved ones by my actions that I regret wholeheartedly.
Mr. Miles, it might be a comfort to you to know that the board received an email from the Stiles family dated Friday, October 21st, 2022. And he said, this is the statement from the family. After deep reflection, we have concluded that although this catastrophic and devastating event forever changed the course of the lives of our family, we do not feel comfortable making a decision that would forever alter someone else's life. We trust that the state of Louisiana will be able to decide if this person is indeed reformed enough to be able to not only re-enter society, but hopefully make a positive and impactful contribution. And it's signed, the family of George Stiles. How does that make you feel?
God has answered my prayers.
So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Jackson. Mr. Rocher?
Thank you, Manager. Just one question, Mr. Miles. You were arrested in December of 1981, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So this December will be 41 years that you've been incarcerated. And I just think that to correct the record, because you said you have been incarcerated 40 years as of December of this year, but it's 41. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I guess I lost track. 40 years is a long time.
And lastly, I only did that to correct the record. Lastly, I'd like to thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Could we hear from the parole project, Mr. Myers?
Yes, good afternoon, Board. Kerry Myers with Louisiana Parole Project. I would love to sit here and talk about Mr. Miles's service to his community at Angola, his service to our country. That's all been covered. Y'all have done an excellent job of covering that, Ms. Jackson and Board. We're prepared to support Mr. Miles through his transition on a long-term basis. He is still viable, even at 72 years old. We'll make sure he has connected to any services. We'll make sure he gets an evaluation. It was brought up about PTSD. We'll make sure he gets anything that he needs related to that. And if that referral includes treatment or any kind of substance abuse treatment, we'll make sure he gets connected to that. We'll make sure he has housing and is connected to any other medical services. We just want to say that we believe Mr. Miles is an excellent candidate for recommendation, and we stand behind and supporting any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear from, I think Mr. Chuck Romero, one of our victim assistance coordinators, is there in the DA's office. Could we hear from Mr. Romero?
Good afternoon. All right, so I picked up on this. The original clemency was completed by the WAE just a month or two before I came on board. So she got the impact statements at that time. She spoke to Donnie Livingston, who is the widow, who is the husband of the daughter of the victim, and she spoke to Miss Jennifer Grammer, who's one of the children of Miss Diane Livingston. Miss Diane Livingston had passed. At the time, Mr. Donnie Livingston had no comment regarding clemency, and Mr. Jennifer Grammer also had no comment. Subsequent to the clemency investigation being submitted, the son of the victim, George Stiles, sent something to the WAE unopposed to the clemency. She sent this to the board. She downloaded it to Oracle, I believe, as a memo, but she also sent it a hard copy. I don't know if you got that, but at the time, the son of the victim was unopposed. In it, just like the memo you received, Mr. Ariel Stiles stated he has served enough time as a Christian. I want to show him the mercy that he did not show my father. And that's what his statement to the board is. After I came on board, I retracked down the victims to make sure that their statements are the same. Mr. Donnie Livingston's statement remains the same. He had no comments. I recontacted Mr. Ariel Stiles. He said the same thing regarding clemency. He has no comments. And subsequent to that is when I reached out to the children and found Miss Rebecca Pinkard, and she said that she was going to think about it. And that's when she sent me that email on just past Friday. And I sent that this morning, emailed it to you guys, and I dropped it into Oracle this morning too. That's it.
You have that. Thank you so much for your work in tracking those folks down. Mr. Clark, we hear from DA's perspective.
Yes, good afternoon. Just briefly, some comments on this case. What appears to be kind of somewhat of a new wrinkle in this case, listening to Mr. Miles speaking, apparently now there's become some type of newfound self-defense claim in here. My understanding is that now the claim is Mr. Stiles had swung a hammer at Mr. Miles in this case, which then precipitated in him murdering Mr. Stiles, which is, from my recollection, contained nowhere within a police report. In fact, the statements of the witnesses are to the contrary, that Mr. Miles was the individual who approached Mr. Stiles, swung at Mr. Stiles first, and then basically unloaded his handgun, murdering Mr. Stiles in this case. Nonchalantly left the scene, and matter of fact told another employee who was arriving that he had just murdered him, and when the other employee did not believe him, that he told him to go look and see. Basically, once again, a very nonchalant statement. So I'm not sure how much responsibility has really been taken for this, given that we now have this introduction of what I would characterize as a so-called self-defense argument to some extent. Obviously, this is a murder case. This is a life sentence case. While it is recognized that Mr. Miles has served 41 years, I think the state's question would be, what is the value of a life? Or more specific, what is the value of Mr. Stiles' life? Is his life worth simply 41 years and community service? I would think not. I would think that's why the state of Louisiana has the penalties that it has for the offense of murder, not simply 41 years in community service. It's unfortunate that it took the murder of Mr. Stiles in this case for Mr. Miles to, quote unquote, turn the corner. Unfortunately, Mr. Miles has shown not only in public, but also as far as write-ups while incarcerated, that there is some opposition to authority. The fact that Mr. Stiles may have used not so appropriate language towards Mr. Miles certainly did not warrant him in losing his life and having his family lose their family member in this case. And with that, the state would oppose a granting of clemency in this case.
So thank you so much for the DA's participation. Mr. Miles, is there a statement you'd like to make?
I know I can't change anything. Lord knows I wish I could. I just pray y'all would look favor my record. And we're gonna be a clemency. Thank you for your time.
Yes, sir. Ms. Cole?
Thank you. Mr. Miles came to prison and did what he needed to do. He took full responsibility for his actions, and he realized he needed help, so he sought God. And it didn't stop there. Not only did he become better with his faith with God, but he's also helped a community of people become better in their faith, as he's been a chaplain since 2006. He participated in many programs to address the issues that he was having at the time of the offense. He recognized that he had an issue with alcohol, and we believe that it stems from the stressful career that he's had in the military. If you've heard him say, he started drinking heavily after Vietnam and during Vietnam, and that's because of the stresses of leaving and losing family members since he's been there. And although he doesn't have any diagnosed PTSD, I think that we can all agree that that may have been an issue that contributed to the tension that he received with Mr. Stiles. And not to condone any of his actions, but just to put into context what was going on at that time. He also realized that because of his alcohol that he needed help and that it would always be in temptation. And he's currently in AA, and should he be released, he's going to continue to participate in AA. He's also participated in many outreach programs, and he didn't let his military career stop him from being an asset to his community and serving his community. He founded the Camp F, Vets Incarcerated. He regularly volunteers with the hospice program, and he's a minister for the Vets Incarcerated. And as a Class A trustee for the last 30 plus years, he's shown that he has been rehabilitated and that he is trustworthy. Despite his age of 72, he's still hardworking, he's still in good health, and he can contribute greatly to his community. As you heard him say before, he could hardly keep a job, but he's been at the water plant for 20 plus years, which shows his commitment to and his hard work and his dedication. And lastly, Mr. Miles has a great reentry plan with the Parole Project. We're going to help him reintegrate into society. We're going to help him get a job. We're going to help him with mentorship and any type of social services that he may need. Mr. Miles is a long way from the person that he was spiritually, mentally, physically, and emotionally from that 32-year-old man. Because of the changes that he's made, he hopes that he's earned a second chance. And as you've heard today, that the family is not opposed to him, and they're leaving it into your hands. So we ask that you show the same mercy that they've shown and grant his clemency. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, is the board prepared to vote? Ms. Jackson?
Mr. Miles, you hear a lot of people say thank you for your service, and it's become a cliche. We say that to people who never really left when in combat or did anything, but we say it. But in your case, we do need to thank you for your service. A 19-year-old kid dropped in the middle of a hellhole and served honorably and valiantly is not someone who's resistant to authority. I take exception to the DA's characterization of who you are. He's too young to have gone to Vietnam, so he has no idea what people experience. I had a brother who went to Vietnam. Thank God he came back, but he came back with a drinking problem. And thank God he has overcome that drinking problem. And you cannot underestimate the impact of that trauma on people's lives. And so I do thank you that you serve with such valor and with such honor. You have done exceptionally well as an inmate. To only have had 3 write-ups in almost 41 years shows that you are not a person who is defiant. You are a person who does what you are required to do, just as you did in Vietnam. You said you didn't expect any special recognition for it, you just did your job. And that's what you've done since you've been in prison, and you've done that honorably and admirably as well. So my vote today would be to recommend to the governor a commutation of sentence to 50 years with immediate parole eligibility because of your outstanding prison record, the positive remark from the warden, and the outstanding service you provided not only to the prison but to your fellow inmates, not to mention the service you provided to your country. That's my vote.
Thank you, Mrs. Jackson. Mr. Roche?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Miles, I'd like to echo the words of Mrs. Jackson. I too am a child of the Vietnam War era. I was ordered to go to be inducted as I finished college. But for medical reasons, I was rejected. And I understand what a hellhole Vietnam was by American soldiers. And again, I'd like to thank you for your service. Based upon the victim's family being unopposed, an excellent disciplinary record, only 2 or 3 write-ups in 41 years of incarceration, good programs, the length of incarceration, your age, and positive remarks from Warden Falco, my recommendation is to commute your sentence to 50 years with parole eligibility after serving 40 years. Good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Roche. Mr. Marabella?
Mr. Miles, I concur with everything both of my colleagues have indicated. My vote likewise would be to commute your sentence, to recommend a commutation of sentence to 50 years with immediate parole.
Mr. Freeman?
I totally agree with everything that's been said. My vote also is to commute your sentence to 50 years with immediate parole eligibility.
And I concur with my colleagues, Mr. Miles. My vote is the same, so it's unanimous. We'll make a recommendation to the governor that your sentence be commuted to 50 years and that you be immediately paroled. Good luck.
Thank you all.
Madam Chair. Excuse
Yes,
me,
sir.
Madam Chair. May I speak?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to address a comment that was made regarding, I suppose, the state's characterization of Mr. Miles's military service. I would like to point out to the board that my family, my entire family, has served in the military. No one was disparaging Mr. Miles's military service in this matter. The state takes a great deal of offense to that. What we're trying to point out is the nature of this offense and the change of the facts in this case. Nobody is trying to make light of his military career in this matter.
Yes,
I would
sir.
like to
Thank you. Sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Wow. Whew. Brian Clark, the DA, is pissed, and Kerry Myers just had a grin. I think he enjoyed that a little bit. That was, I've never seen a DA so angry. I mean, he is basically raging through their deliberation. He's like really got triggered, and well, I can't blame him. It was I mean, Miss Jackson, when she throws a gut punch, she throws a gut punch, but I think it was deserving. I mean, for one thing, in his speech about why he should stay locked up, he was talking about his record and his write-ups, but 41 years and he only had 3 write-ups. Then he laid a point as to where how the story had changed. And this is something that we do talk a lot about on this channel, which is when you take accountability, don't change the history of it. In this case, he was stating that he had a wrench. All he had instead called him a slur. We don't know what that slur was, but I think some of us can have certain assumptions. And he pulled out his weapon and he shot him. The problem is in this case, why I'm not taking the prosecutor's side is that it's been 41 years. The family's victims went out of their way to say that they're not opposed. Here is a man, like Miss Jackson said, that at 19 years old, he was dropped into the middle of a hellhole. He served I mean, his record speaks for itself, 2 Bronze Stars. I think it's like the 9th highest award you can get. But it's still a very meaningful one to get. He saw a lot of combat. And he answered the question like a real, like out of the movies. I was just doing what I was supposed to do. There's no hubris in this man. There's no ego. He didn't even, it was interesting when the victim gave the forgiveness, and it seemed like maybe he was about to shed a tear, and his attorney did what an attorney's supposed to do and got him a tissue. And we have seen plenty of other people sitting in that chair take that opportunity to dry what might be crocodile tears. He didn't do that. He did not lift the tissue to his eyes. He's not faking anything. I think what you see is what you get. He's a man who went out, was an excellent soldier, came back like many people did from Vietnam, and just struggled. And we see second-degree murder cases go 25 years, 20 years. He served 41 years. So as the DA, why are you being a stickler and saying he was prosecuted for taking a life, so he needs to serve his life? It's just a little bit, not a little bit, it's like, why? That's just not the right thing in this situation. Especially because the victim doesn't oppose. So why do you oppose, Mr. DA? He thought the story wasn't legit, but I can take a pass on that. I really can. But that's an opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. It's then we go. Wow, I mean, he's too young to understand Vietnam. He's too young, and he doesn't understand. And then it's interesting to know Miss Jackson's brother went to Vietnam. came back and had a drinking problem. Man, war is messed up. Our politicians, on all sides of the aisle, send our boys and girls out to war, and I guess the last admirable war was World War II, really. My grandfather served in Korea. He's 93, God bless his soul. Still singing, dancing, and sharp as a whip. I'm a lucky guy to have him in my life. How do you guys feel about this? Are there any Vietnam gurus out there that can add a little bit of context? Please put it in the comment section. I am all for it, and certainly I think this DA probably won't be forgetting about Miss Jackson or this board anytime soon. But hopefully the governor signs off on this and the prosecutor can't whisper into his ear, and he'll get paroled. I don't know where he'll go. Well, that's why Randy Meyer's there. Randy Meyer's going to help him out. But he probably has little family or no family, man. That's going to be, imagine getting out after 41 years. He is not going to recognize the world he steps into. Think about that. How is he going to handle it? Man. When you think about this man's life, it is just so tragic. It's so tragic. With that, I'll let you go.